always a little discombobulated with this class because I got out of the other one at like 12:45. Like that. So that always takes me a little bit. So there's a normalization assignment here. There's also a PowerPoint, which I think I'm going to skip, but I'm going to talk about the ideas of it. So it's there for your reference, though, if you want. I'll show you the assignment, and then we'll kind of work through a sample. And then I will give you time to work on the assignment. So the assignment, I should probably do student view. It basically gives you an entity with all these fields, and then you need to go through and adjust it in terms of normal forms. So let me start talking about normal forms, what that could possibly mean. So one of the things, I'm going to bring up Notepad so I can post these notes that we make. I'm not sure if this is the best way, but my whiteboard really stinks. And if I do it on the whiteboard, it doesn't record, although I could take pictures of it and post them, I suppose. So a couple of you said you'd heard of normalization. What does it mean to you? Kind of. It's basically a set of the set of rules are points. Basically, they were all white papers. There's about 12 of them. Maybe it'll be more than that. Maybe 8 or 10 of them. Each one of which goes through and tries to describe something to do to your database that will remove possible, what they call anomalies or mistakes. Right? The first 3, which is all that we're really going to cover, are all you really need to be pretty sure that your database is going to work. The others get deeper and deeper, more subtle refinements along the way. Most of these normalization white papers are written in math, describing the mathematics of the relationships and things. So they're not necessarily directly readable unless you really like reading math. But they are there. We could look at them. There's a pretty good Wikipedia page on them. Pretty good, not great. So the gist of the normalization, I'm just going to talk about it, and then we'll talk about the terms a little bit too. The first level of well, first I'll talk about the anomalies that they try to relate. Anomalies that they try to get rid of. One is a update anomaly. Anybody? I'm having trouble typing. Especially I'm having trouble typing anomaly. Anybody? It's anomaly with IE, or that's correct? IE. But how about singular? Anomaly. All right. Why? Okay. It looks wrong. It looks really wrong. Sometimes when they're right, they look wrong. Sometimes when they're wrong, they look right. Anybody have an idea what an update with a D in there would be? Like what kind of it's a fairly simple concept. That doesn't mean I expect you to know it. I'm just asking. All right, so update anomalies are basically when you have to update the same information in more than one place. So if you need to change existing information and you have to change it in more than one place, that's an update anomaly. You should never have to change anything except in one place. All information should reside in one place only. So if you have to update info in more than one place. Another is the insert anomaly. And that's basically where you can't insert one thing unless you insert something else first. And you basically can get into kind of a loop where you can't insert this because you have to insert that, but you can't insert this because you have to do the other, right? So you can't insert something because other information is missing, but you can't insert the missing information because it requires the other. Right? It's a design flaw. Obviously, it creates a loop. But basically, you can't insert one thing because it depends on another. And you can't insert that because it also depends on the one before it, right? I'm trying to think of how to state that. So it creates a loop. It creates an infinite loop, actually. So you want to avoid that. And basically what it means is that when you do, well, I'm going to talk about what these implications these have for the normalization. Normalization is used as a way of going through your database and just making sure that the structure is sound. Does that make sense? We split things up. This might require you to split things up more. The third kind and the last kind of anomaly is the deletion anomaly, which actually sounds like a really good name for a detective novel. The deletion anomaly basically is if you delete one thing, you accidentally lose something else. So an example, and this can happen in the Vincent's database that we're going to be doing. If in the inventory, all your album information is in the inventory as well. If you delete an item in the inventory, you might lose the information about the album, right? You might not want to lose that, but if you sell the last album, then any reference to that album may be gone, right? You lose something that you might not have wanted to lose. If you keep a separate album table, then if you delete it from the inventory, it's still there in the album, right? The album information is still there. But if you delete one thing, you lose something else that unintended. That's not, is that right? Okay, so those are the three anomalies. Basically, insert, update, delete. Things that can go wrong with those. You don't want to delete things in more than, you don't want to lose things accidentally by deleting. You don't want to have to update things in more than one place. And you don't want to create dependencies for insertion kinds of things. So the first normal form basically says that you cannot have repeating. There should be no repeating groups and no arrays. Does anybody have an idea of what that might mean? You guys are quiet tonight, this afternoon.
So like an array, like don't have lists.
Right, you don't want a list of things, right? You don't want to. So one of the examples that I often use is like a CD. So say you had a CD and you had tracks, all right? So what you can't do with this is you can't do track 1, track 2, track 3. So assume the average CD has 13 tracks. All right, so you have in your tables 13 of these track, numbered things. What happens if you have 5 tracks, or it's like a progressive rock one? You have 2 tracks, one for each side. All the rest are empty, right? So you have a lot of wasted field space. What happens if you have 14 tracks? Can't enter the 14th. The other problem, and it's even a bigger problem than that, is that if you have 13 of these, you have to query 13 different fields to find any one track. right? It's unwieldy, right? So you can't have a list like that. What that means, and we're going to do this as an exercise in a moment, you have to create a separate table for tracks, right? So you would have like your CD information. I'm just going to do this CD, and we'll just say the CD has like the title. What else would it have?
Artist.
Maybe. I actually wouldn't put artist in there for a reason. I'm going to put date here or whatever. All right, so this, actually, the one notation, this is almost easier than drawing patterns. And some kind of ID for it, probably. Okay, so title and year. And then you would have track, and it would have like a track ID, and it would have the CD ID as a foreign key, right? And then it would have the track title, and whatever else information you wanted about it. One reason I wouldn't put the artist in there is that there's a lot of compilation CDs.
Yes.
Yeah. And we could deal with that in a moment. The other thing that you don't want to do, is you don't want to do something like a field with tracks, and then for the data in there you do, okay, let's think of an album. Why is it I have thousands of albums and I can't think of a single one when I'm standing and trying to think of one? Anybody have an album that they have in their mind that they can think of just a couple of songs? Okay, what was on that one? I think I have that one, but what was on there? Which would be one word. I mean, what, 2 words probably. We only need a couple, actually. Substitute. Just one more, maybe. Doesn't even have to be on the album. Just think of a Who track. Okay. So if you do this is an array, right? It's basically just a list of things. What would be the bad thing about doing it that way? Again, assuming you wanted to find a single track or something. Was, yeah, there's that. You wouldn't have all the extra information that you might want about a track. Also, if you were to search for a track, the title of a track, there's no way to find it there except to do like a substring parse. You'd have to program something to find it, right? It's just not a good way to do it. In relational databases, arrays and repeated fields are a no-no. They violate the first normal form. That's what first normal form is about. When we do a NoSQL database, they love arrays. But we're not going to, but in a relational database, you shouldn't have them. So if you see those, again, the solution for both of these is basically to break it out into its own table. Right? And when we look at the normalized forms, normalization, it almost always the solution is to break things out into more tables. Right? The other thing, so whenever you see, so one of the takeouts of this is anything that has plural values, right, in a table, anything that can have multiple values should be separated out into its own table. So that's sort of the general rule. Okay, is first normal form fairly clear? Most spreadsheets are not in first normal form, right? Spreadsheets tends to be a lot of repetition. in a spreadsheet, you're really likely to do something like just do an array or list all the fields and things. So spreadsheets are generally not in first normal form. And a lot of people's first database job is to take spreadsheets and fix them so they can go into databases. All right, so second normal form is about the gist of it, and then I'll give you the formal words. The gist of it is that every entity should be about one thing and not more than one. Okay, so that's what the gist of it is. The technical term they use is that it should not have any functional dependencies. And I don't care if you remember. I don't care if you remember the functional dependency part. What the sign of this is, imagine that in your middle of your CD track, you had these fields like studio name, studio address, studio URL. I don't know. Anything else you can think about studio? It's good enough, I guess. The thing is, you have a whole block of things that don't really relate to CD, right? They're all related to each other. If you're going in an entity and the entity is, say, we're going to look at a student entity in a moment. If you're looking at student entity and there's a whole block of things that deal with department, then probably you need to pull that block out into its own entity. In this case, studio would have to be its own entity. Things, everything in a CD thing should relate only to the CD. Everything in a student entity should relate only to a student. I mean, the gist of this is that every entity should be about only one thing, right? It's a set. You're defining a set, and everything in that set must have the same. They're all members of the same set. They all relate to each other. Now, studio is related. It might be perfectly fine to have a studio ID in the CD, right? It's a related piece of information, but you have a block of things that are modifying each other, not the CD. Does that make sense? I'm just going to say above this, remove blocks of attributes that relate to each other but not the main topic. They usually say, well, instead of the main topic, they usually say the key, CD ID or whatever. And then I'll just, because I'll post this later. I don't know if this is less boring than the PowerPoint, but if these attributes were. Okay, so that's second normal form. Third normal form is even more subtle, and it's a little bit rarer. A lot of times, if you've solved the second normal form, there aren't any violations of third normal form left. It's still related. It's still basically that every entity should be about one thing. That's part of the gist of this one. And it means that every attribute should describe the main thing. The main difference between this and the second normal form is that it's more subtle because it's usually just a single attribute. It's not a block of them. So say that in CD you had artist. Now again, having artist in CD could be a problem because of multiples, but artist country. You had those two things in there. The artist could be relevant, right? CD as an artist could have multiple artists, but it could be relevant. The artist country, though, is describing the artist, not the CD. So you have the difference between this and this is just simply that you have, it's just one field describing another field that isn't about the CD or isn't about the student. It's just a little bit more subtle version of this. But every single attribute, every single field should be devoted to the topic of the entity. There are some problems that can arise from this in terms of repetition and in terms of accidentally, so you could get the update where you have to update this in more than one place. You could also get it where if you deleted something, you could lose the artist country. I'm not sure that's a big loss, but you could do. It does cause some anomalies. Real quickly, I'm going, and this is called, the other is a functional dependency. This one is called, suddenly my brain is gone, a transitive dependency. I only mention these because if you ever go to work in relational databases anywhere, they assume you know a little bit about normalization. Okay. And if you want to know a lot more, just real quickly, we'll just talk about database normalization. And there's the Wikipedia. Now this, this article needs attention. That's always not a good sign. Yeah, maybe. So they talk about the different things, to reduce the collection of relations from undesired insertion, update, and deletion dependencies, to reduce the need for restructuring the collection, to make the relational model more informative, to make the collection of relations neutral. And they talk about the update, insertion, and deletion anomaly, and they give examples of the anomalies, and then they talk about the normal forms. And these are a list of the normal forms. As I said, if you go up to the third normal form, you're usually fine. Your database is going to work. The others are really specialized instances that don't happen very much. If you want, you can go through and you can become a expert at normal forms. The trouble is by the time you get down to here, and one of the things about each of these normal forms is before you do the second normal form, it assumes that you've got the first normal form. The third normal form assumes you've achieved the second normal form. And each one of these somewhat assumes the one before it that you've done them. So there is sort of a sequence there. By the time you get to here, half of your tables, maybe 2/3 of your tables are nothing but keys. And that works really well in the database, but it actually has a performance hit. When you're querying things and you have to join things, which we will do eventually, it takes processing time. And if you have to join 30 tables to get a reasonable readable thing, it could be a hit that's way too much for like a commercial site, which is too long. It takes too long to get your data up there. So there is a process, which I'm not going to have. You should normalize first, but there is a process called denormalization, which you should only do if you have to for performance. Amazon, right? So Amazon has these gigantic databases. They denormalize where you're searching for products. All the product information has been rejoined into one big massive table with lots of indexes. And the point of that is that it allows you to search it really fast and get your results in a second or less, right, when you're searching for it. The disadvantage is that it is possible you can buy something they don't have. They update that table fairly frequently, like every few minutes. But it is possible if that everything's sold out in that few minutes, they sense the refresh and you buy something that they don't have. It's rare. It's rare enough that they would rather give you the speed and take the risk of doing that. And then if somebody buys something they don't have, they'll either scramble to go find it or they'll send you a sorry letter. I've had that happen a couple of times. I tend to try to buy things that are rare sometimes. But the reason they do it is for speed, right? If you had the full transactional database up on the main website, it would take too long. They could probably make it so it only takes 15, 20 seconds, but for us, that most people won't do that. All right, so those are normalizations. Does that make a little bit of sense? So I have Visio here, and if you want to, what we'll do is I made a student thing here. Let me make it bigger, and I think I will change the colors on it a little too. Go to design. I never am sure which colors. Is that easier to read? No, yes, no, maybe. No. Still too small?
Yeah.
The trouble with making it big is it won't fit on the page. Better? All right, so it's not all here, so I'm going to have to scroll up and down when we do this. But so this is basically what would be an unnormalized data table, right? And what we would do is go through and say, first of all, for first normal form, what things do you see that shouldn't be there? Well, so it's more second normal form, but yes. So the major one and major two, right? That's one of the things you shouldn't do. So typically what you would do then, if you see something that's plural like that, you create an entity. I'm going to call it major. I'll give it some kind of ID. Major name. And then I'll just delete these from here. So I guess everything comes into eventually. We saw the department, but are there other things that are plural that would be an array? Yeah, course numbers. So you probably need something like course, right? And I will do like a course number here. Maybe a course name. Possibly you could put the course grade, right? Because we're doing, these are the courses that a student took, I think. Anything else plural? Years enrolled, I'm not sure of. We might want to move that. Anything that has a plural in it is suspect. We'll leave it for right now. So if that's first normal form, we had those two things that were plural, right? So we pulled those out. As you mentioned, department is second normal form. It's basically it's a block that doesn't describe a student, it describes a department. And so I am going to make another entity. I think, where do I want to make it? These are so giant. So I will make this one as department. For a department, the ID could be the name, but I'll just do an ID, and I'll do the department name. The phone. And actually something that it can do that would actually make this easier. Oops. There we go. And I'll delete that over there. Okay, so most of these are describing the student now. Is there anything in third normal form? Yeah. Yeah, so we have the advisor phone describing the advisor. Those two describe each other rather than thing. Again, a student could easily have an advisor, but you don't need the phone number in there, right? Because it would be repeated for every student that advisor had. So it give you that update anomaly where if the phone number changed for that advisor, you'd have to change it in every student that had that advisor. So I'm going to just drag these down a little. So I'm going to do advisor. And we'll just give them an ID and a name. Actually, since we have name, let's just do that. I got a middle one that I want to get rid of there. I can do this. And we'll do the phone. Okay, that's good enough, I guess. There's a blank space in there that I'd like to get rid of, but okay. So this is really hard to see, but have we handled all the things? So then the last part of we'll do this is we'll create the relationships between them. And your assignment is very much like this, although with something somewhat easier. It has fewer components. All right, so an advisor and before I move this one, I'm going to I'm just going to make the endings bigger. So one advisor can have many students, right? And what we would do here is we would add an advisor ID as a foreign key. Okay, what about a major? Does a student have more than one major? Depends on the school, but we could probably say no. If that's the case, then we can take actually, let me just copy this. Where did it go? Why is it way up there? All right.
You can double major in something.
Yeah, if you do. So do you want to do double majors? Because if we do that, then we need to do what? A linking. Yeah. So let's do, I guess, an entity. And we'll say major ID. And then I'm going to bring over primary key attribute. Oh, won't let me. Primary key attribute, which should be above the line. Come on, you can do it. And we'll do student ID. We'll get rid of this and this. And that would make one major, come on, can have many students. I hate these. All right. And where did it go? Did it go way up there again? One student can have many majors. Oh, that didn't link very well.
Is there a better software?
There are other software, some of which do things better for this. Visio is actually pretty good. It's just annoying. No, I broke that. Don't want it hooked there. There we go. That's a bit strange, but all right. What about department? Does a major belong to a department? So both of these, by the way, could be foreign keys as well as. So probably I'm going to see what happens if I copy this one. Hey, it's in the right end. So one department can have, it can actually have many majors. And I'm going to just change this to department ID. And I'll try to make it a foreign key. That's weird. The way these things are moving, I don't want. Why is that there? There we go. That's a little better. All right. And then when we have the advisor, does the advisor belong to a department? Okay. We can make it a one-to-many, or I hate this level of zoom. It is possible, although let's just ignore that possibility, I guess, that an advisor can work for more than one department. Typically, they only work for one at a time. Okay, so let's take a look. I'm going to zoom this down to where we can see more of the whole thing. We still have course, and course has the grades, right? One student could take many courses. I'm not worried about sections. These are just the courses the student has taken. So like on a transcript. Now, actually, if I'm going to do that, I want to delete that one. One student can take many courses. And my mess is starting to get to be a mess. All right. And a course belongs to a department. So actually, we have the relationship here, but I should do a student ID as a foreign key. And we will need a department key. Our department ID, the foreign key. It gets a little bit weirder if we try to include courses and majors, because one course can be used in many different majors, and etc. So you could make a linking table between those two if you want. and then we'll be done, I think. So I will do major ID and course ID, or course number, yeah. Delete these two. And this gets, as I said, even messier. So one major can have many of these, and one course can be part of many majors. But yes, in terms of, there are other softwares that do this a little bit nicer. And moving these around into where it's clear what's going on is a difficult, that's worse, and that disconnected. Damn these things. Anyway, the main point being that when you go through the normalization process, you may have to break things up even more, right? And this is, it's a fairly simple thing. That was that student, just that original student thing. And we have broken it up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tables, 7 entities. Getting the hang of this, as I said, takes a long time. But when we go through this, we can look at these and say, does this, everything in this talk about one thing? Even though we have a foreign key, that foreign key relates to a student because a student has an advisor, right? This one is an advisor, and again, everything in there relates to an advisor. An advisor belongs to a department, so that's okay there. We have the department, and all this information just describes the department. There's nothing extra there. Where we have the major, these just describe, all we have is the major name and the department ID. You might have other things in there too. And each student can have multiple majors, and each major can have multiple students. And then we did the same with the course. Each course can belong to a major, but, well, each course can have many majors, belong to many majors, and each major can have many courses. So does that make sense? Kind of? Guys, all right. So I said it's a puzzle. It's a puzzle you can get better at with practice. So let's look at the assignment. I will post that too. And I'll post what I did in the notepad. And then there is that PowerPoint if you want to look at it, which may actually do things a little clearer than I was doing them. So this assignment, and I'm going to give you the next hour to do it, is just to, and if you want to use some other piece of software, you can find one. There are things, particularly online, and I've been meaning to make a list of them, but I never seem to get to it. If you have some that you're using and want to send them to me, I'll post them, or you can too. I think you have the ability to post it like a conversation in Canvas where you list things. It'd be good to get some resources. So what this is an entity that has book ISBN, book title, book publisher address, book publisher city, book date, book genre description, book author 1, book author 2, book author 3. So you can see that it's set up for you to break it apart. Right? So what I want you to do is kind of what we did with student. Just take that, and if you want, you could copy it all into an entity and Visio or whatever you're going to use, and then break it out according to, get rid of the plurals, the lists, get rid of subgroups, and get rid of the other things. And if you want, so it's about 2, we have an hour left. Maybe in the last 10 minutes, we'll kind of go over it. So give it a shot, and then we'll go over it in the last few minutes. guys okay? And if you need a break at any time, because this room is hot. I don't know why this room is so hot. It's got big ceilings. These computers are not as hot as some computers. They're not putting out a lot of heat. Little. Yeah. I can feel the heat back here, but compared to the old towers, they're not putting on any heat.
Central heating.
Maybe. We're also near the doors. I think that would cool us down some.
The house I grew up in had a big central heat, like a heat pump type
Yeah.
thing. And the closer you were to where that was, the warmer.
We have a little of that at our house too. We have an electric furnace. But we have really high ceilings and all the heat just goes to the roof. You know, so it's freezing. You have to kind of overheat the house. And the bedrooms get sweltering if you get the living room.
That's how my mom's
Yeah.
house is. She's got a split level and the really tall ceilings in the
Yeah.
living room. Take all the heat.
So I'm going to post these things real quick. And then I will save this. All right, so I put what we did is up on the blog. You put that on. Yeah, so you have just the two. That's it. Then you probably want to. I wouldn't do author name. So just do author name. Yeah, just do those. And then once you got it, it's fine. It's all right. Yeah, there you go. And then here you've got the publisher. Yeah.
Wasn't sure.
Yeah, because there's a whole group of things that describe the publisher, right?
Okay.
So you might have like the publisher ideas of one key book, but you probably want to publish it.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. It's just becoming frustrating. I'm just trying to copy something up to GitHub, but it's so we'll give it about 10, 15 more minutes and then we'll look at it. So how are you guys doing? You ready to go over it, or you want to give it a couple more minutes? Okay. Let me just get out of this. Oops. All right. So as I said, I posted what we did in class there. And let's look at the assignment. So I'm going to bring up Visio again. And I'll just do a new sheet. Let's make it bigger. And let's do, you guys can help me. So we had, what were all the things in there? There was book ISBN. What else? Book title. Okay. Yeah. Although we could do, all right, so attribute and input book publisher city. So, and then now if there was, I didn't hear. Oh, book genre. What else? And then was it the authors or three? Don't have to do this, but just so we have some kind of thing to work from. Uh, okay, so what would be one of the first things if we're looking for plural things? Yeah, so probably author. So I will pull that out and we'll make author. And we could give the author some kind of ID. And I'm just going to do author name. If you want more stuff about the author, you could, but mostly then we can remove these from there. So first of all, we'll just break out anything that's plural or a group like that. So that's sort of a plural thing. What else would you break out? Well, you might want the genre out of there. Now that depends a little bit. Well, yeah, because we have the genre and the genre description, right? So we do want a genre out of there. So I'm just go ahead.
What's the difference between genre and genres?
I think all I'm thinking is that the genre be like the genre name. Yeah.
I just have to look genre.
I was just thinking, you don't need a description. I really just wanted you to have something, that violated their normal form. Because it's a description, is that so? It's possible that depending on your descriptions, what's a science fiction mystery, or what's science fiction fantasy versus hard science fiction. I mean, if you wanted to give some sort of description along the way to give those things a little more clarity, or I don't know. There are a lot of genres. Music gets worse.
So acceptable would it be to just get rid of genre description?
Oh, certainly.
Like that.
You certainly could.
You never want to get rid of it. Because the genre is the most important part of the book.
Possibly, although one of
To
the
the purchaser.
but you might want, I mean, if you just had the genre name, if it was just
Oh, yeah.
sci-fi, yeah, description is just further description of it. So whether you have that or not is kind of up to you. One of the things that I would do, I'd probably remove it from the book anyway, even if there was just genre, because a lot of things can be described as more than one genre. So there is such a thing as science fiction mystery. It could be both a mystery and a science fiction. There is such a thing as historical romance. So you could say it's historical and it's romance. I mean, there could be multiple genres for a book. What else would we remove? Publisher, because that's one of the blocks, that's second normal form, right? And then what we'll do is we'll do the relationships between these. And so I'm doing, when we start actually building these, which is soon, then we have to decide what we're doing about IDs, what that means. Actually, what I want to do, so I'm going to just drag that over there, but I'll call it publisher name. That one, and then I'll just do that, just get rid of the book. And then the address. Okay, so we got the publisher. I think our entities are okay now. We don't have a lot of information about the book, but you could add stuff. These are what was there. You can have a description of the book. You could have.
So books can have multiple dates.
That's also true if you want to get.
And editions.
Yeah.
Well, a different edition would technically be a different book too.
Well, the reprints.
Usually what they do, and if you wanted to be really precise about it, you could put it elsewhere. They usually put the most recent date. uh, I know doing notes, it's sometimes hard to say which date to use because I usually have a whole list of dates when it was published at different places, and then whether it was published in New York or London or Los Angeles. So if you wanted to be real clear about the dates, you could remove it and do a thing. Yeah.
About the author, would you also suggest having like author to author three just have the full
No, no. So what you would want, that's where we can start. How would we handle that? Because one author can write many books, but one book can have many authors. Yeah, but how would you link them? It's a many to many, right? One author has many books. One book can have many authors. Just think of a collection of short stories, or a lot of times books are written by more than one person. Whenever there's a many to many, you need a linking table. So I will call it book author. You don't have to call it book author if you have a better name. I'm going to do book ISBN. And actually, if you get real serious about, not all books have ISBNs. But let's ignore that for now. If it's older, really old, it may not have an ISBN, or if it's a self-published book. I don't know. I have, I have physical books that are from the oldest book I have is from 1500.
Yeah. So
And it's
the barcode on the back. Check that.
It doesn't have a barcode.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. It has a leather cover. It was published in England. I bought it from a priest for $1 at Gonzaga. They said, you know, this book is 400, 500 years old. It says, oh, if it wasn't worth much then, it's not worth much now. So anyway, and then we'd have the author ID, whatever that is, right? And again, this is not necessary, but I often do make these also primary keys. What it does is it keeps you from assigning the same author to the same book twice, right? So you can assign many authors as long as the pair is unique. So the same author number can repeat several times, and the same book can repeat several times as long as the pair doesn't repeat. That makes sense? So the ISBN, as I said, it depends on your book collection whether you want it. The other books, besides really old books that don't have ISBNs, is some self-published electronic books don't have ISBNs. If you don't care about electronic self-published books, then it's not an issue. So I'll do a relationship. Do I have? Nope. I was hoping I still had one of these. So if we do this, one author can have many books. And I need a little room there, I think. And one book, they always come in the wrong way. One book. Oh, I have to go find the other end. One book can have many authors. If you can get the whole thing to turn green, the whole outer thing, it usually hooks pretty good. So that's how you handle book and author, right, where you have multiples. And a lot of times when you have something enumerated or a list of things, it's going to be a many-to-many relationship. That's why you had the list in the first place. Does that make sense? It's because you kind of knew that there were many possibilities there. All right, so we did book author. Now this gets, does a book have more than one publisher? I suppose it depends over time. What?
Not initially.
Typically, books only have one publisher, but sometimes a publisher goes out of business, another publisher picks it up. Sometimes publishers buy the rights. But let's assume, just for simplicity's sake, that each book has one publisher. One physical book would probably only have one publisher. Another copy of the book at another date might have another one. So I'm going to add an attribute, which is bad because it scrunches that up really bad. All right, so I'm going to do publisher ID.
If we link them, because it makes sense to us, is that okay?
What?
We did a linking table.
You could do a linking table if so. The difference is not. The difference is based on what I would call a business rule. Are we assuming that books can have more than one publisher? If the book can have more than one publisher, and over long enough time, and for some books probably, then you would need a linking table. So you're not wrong, right? It just depends on. I was just simplifying it a little. And I'll do a relationship too. So one publisher can have many books. Okay. Now, so we got author and book author. Genre, which is kind of in the way. I'm going to move this down here. Just so I have something. I might put a picture of this up too. I broke the link. That was good. Little jerk there. So, what is the relation between book and genre? It's probably many to many. You could make a rule if you wanted to, where you're just going to say every book has one genre. It's kind of an unrealistic rule, but you could make that rule, and then it would just be a one-to-many. But typically, you want people to be able to search for it in any way possible. So probably there would be multiple genres. I mean, not every book would have multiple genres, just some. So you could do like the Dresden Files or like mystery, fantasy, urban fantasy. You've never read the Dresden Files? They're very good. The show that they made for it on Sci-Fi was not very good and didn't live very long, but they could have made a great show from it. So this is genre book. And so and again, I'm just kind of hunting with a genre ID, and we'll do the genre name. Actually, the genre ID, and the other thing we need is book ISBN. I'll move genre down. And again, it's the same kind of thing. One book. Come on. Okay. One book can have many genres. One genre can be applied to many books. And this should come up here and also be a primary key, and these are also both foreign keys. And I think we're about done. Let me make this to where we can actually see it.
Would you move the genre to the
I wouldn't. You might to the author. You might to the author if you want. The publisher, there are some publishers that are genre specific, but most of them aren't. Most of them publish a wide variety of different kinds of books. Tor might be purely sci-fi, I don't know, fantasy. But most of, and if you look at not that this matters, but if you look at the Who Owns Who, there's only like 3 publishers.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try a view presentation mode. It'll all get real small, but does that make sense? Is that close to what you guys had? This, as I said, all of this stuff is just for the more practice you have, the better you get at these things. It's hard to make this bigger, this part. I wonder if I could zoom it. I'm going to try something. I'm going to magnify it. And then I'm going to go to view presentation mode. Now I still can't get it all on the screen though. Let's try something here. I want to do so let's go up 150. So
Can you create this in landscape mode?
yes, you can. Although, would that make it fit? I don't know. Maybe. Is that better?
Fit on
No?
your screen.
Yeah.
I zoomed by 150 instead of 200. So. Does this make sense, or is it still pretty alien? No comments? As I said, it takes a little while. The other thing, what we're going to do on Monday, a couple of things that we need for the upcoming part. We're going to copy over the virtual machine, and we will install SQL Server. Yeah.
Actually, I do have a question about this. What normal form 3 rules have been broken?
So when we had the original one,
Yeah.
we had genre and genre description, which I don't think because genre description describes genre and not book, that would be a third normal form. The difference between third and second normal form is subtle, and I'm not sure it matters that much. The difference is in third normal form, you've only got one attribute describing another. In second normal form, you've got kind of a block of things that describe each other. That's really the only difference, whether it's just a single attribute that is describing another, or it's a block of attributes that belong together.
Can something break the normal form 1 and normal form 2?
What?
Can something break?
Yeah, so the author 1, author 2, author 3 broke normal form 1. Possibly genre, depending on how you define it, just because it was plural, it could be plural. But mostly it was the author 1, 2, and 3. You never want to enumerate things in a database structure. And you never want to do a list in a field, just comma separated things.
So there's a link to an uploaded PDF. That's okay to turn this in.
Oh yes, a PDF. Save it as a PDF and turn it in, and that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
This is your normalization assignment.
You don't mind a URL to the PDF?
I do not mind the URL to the PDF. No. Although make sure if you do that I have permissions.
Oh, it's on my server, so
Oh yeah. Okay.
if you have the link, you'll be okay.
Okay. I don't know which. I have no remembrance of who it was or where, but in one of the two ITC 220 classes, somebody shared something with me and I couldn't view it because I
I'm
didn't
not
have
a fan of
permissions.
The Google Docs type stuff. I'd rather just upload stuff to my server because
It's fine. Yeah, URLs work.
you never know.
Google Docs works too. You just have to give me permission. And my school email doesn't work as a permission thing. Basically, permissions for anyone who has the link works. Or if you really want to link to a specific email, my Google account is spconger@gmail.com.
That's always the hassle, is knowing what email to send
Yeah,
it to,
yeah.
and I never get it right, so this is just easy.
Okay, so anyway, on Monday, any other questions before I deal with Monday? Yeah,
You said you're gonna post.
I will post this because both classes have done it now. So, Monday we will copy over the virtual machine and we will install SQL Server. No, you're just stretching. Yeah. The last class the other 220 class, it went as smooth as it's ever gone before. So I'm hopeful that we can do this smoothly. That it'll just go nicely and we'll get those installed and we'll be ready to go ahead. The other thing we may do on Monday is break into groups to build Vincent's final. And I'll show you how to do that. And the design part will be in groups, but implementing it you'll do individually. So I think we're all about done for today. We're kind of good early. Oh, and that's where. So.
It works, yeah.
I felt bad it was like so many times to get installed.
Well, I mean, it happens. But one of them is right?
Yes. Now you've already started that system, so.
Yeah.
So you don't need to do it. Yeah. Well, you know. I actually have no idea what is it? So far, all I know is the application. Those are a little bit high level. On the other hand, you never know what you're going to learn. You may not get the gist of how you start to explain. We're going to do some modeling again.
I just was looking at the.
Yeah, no, we won't have, so it's up to you if you want to. Okay. You probably started off, probably most of the people there about.
All right.
Yeah, and then we'll be there in a second.
Okay, so I was in the process of doing the SQL Server Enterprise.
Sure.
And just got like thoroughly confused how to install it.
What about it did, have you, so you failed, you just click install?
No, I didn't even start it because I went to, because it goes to the little setup manager.
Right.
And then I didn't want to screw anything up because you said it could be kind of a finicky piece.
So what you go to the installation, you want to do a single instance. So there's a SQL Server standalone.
And then after I do that,
So there's a couple of things along the way. So it's standalone, you're not doing a cluster or anything like that. It's going to ask you what accounts to add, and I would just add the current user account each time. That's not best practice if you're a database administrator, but it sure makes your life easier.
yeah. Should I just wait until we do it?
Yeah, because our installation is easier. I think you could do it. I don't think it's horrible.
And then are these all just separate things?
Yeah, now, the one thing that you would want, you for sure want to do the standalone. And what that does is it actually only installs the database engine. The reporting services are optional. That's what you want. It allows you to create web page basically.
Okay.
You do want the management tools. So that the only other part that is absolutely essential for this class. But since you're doing the enterprise, if you want the reporting tools and the data tools which allow you to work, do business intelligence, and actually include some of the can add those things if you want. I would not do add note for you don't have. You don't need to upgrade. You don't really need a machine.
I don't know, yeah.
So
Okay.
probably the top
Top
four.
Okay.
Yeah. And it can take.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I figured. Awesome. That's really all I needed.
Yeah, make sure whenever it asks for an account, just add the current user.
Yep. Yeah, I'll be fine.
Yeah, and if it asks for, I'm just trying to think. You can select. There's a screen where you can select what you want. Don't select anything that relates to SharePoint or Azure, unless unless you have a SharePoint or Azure account.
Well, I do.
Oh, it was,
I have an Azure.
so you might, because you can build all this stuff on Azure.
Yeah, you
So.
know, just in the
Yeah.
cloud.
Oh, yes, you had a question and I didn't forget.
So, I guess, can I create it? Do you have any passport cover in
You don't need that because we have a linking table.
So as long as you have the link.
Right. In fact, you shouldn't have it in there.
Okay.
The linking table is actually literally what links the author to the book and the book.
So they can be in like separate.
Yes,
So then why don't you have a publisher ID?
because we assume that only one publisher.
Okay, but if it's multiple.
But if it was multiple and we created a linking, then it wouldn't be.
Then we would need it, okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Give me a second.
I'm sure. I did this correctly. That's the only concept that I didn't get.
Right, so we got the book author. Rejection of it. So, one author. Right. Well, and we should have an author. We do have that. We got that covers after the publisher ID is the publisher. Right, we're assuming that every book only has one.
But I didn't consider that you said that.
Yeah, so if you do, then you can do it.
Oh, okay.
So the genre, that's good. For the legend, although I also know this. Yeah. You can do that, or you can just click on that. And, like the first video you need to get there. Now, right. Maybe we can reset. It isn't. You have to get the. Yeah, it's right. Yeah. So somewhere in there.
Because I can only get the whole box back.
Yeah, you need to get. I think we lost it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it still has to be selected.
So this is not necessary.
You need one relation between book and author, which is good. It does. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, it's not. Definitely, you know, it's not something that I scholarship. See ya. I will look. I hope your headache is better.